Welcome back to our next session for the U2 Conference 2021. It's really nice to have Chef Gary Stevenson back. He was with us last year making a whole different dish. You might remember that delicious, beautiful American pie. Now we're following it up with a dessert. We've waited a year for dessert, and now, or maybe more of a palate cleanser for the next course. But Gary, it's a pleasure to see you, and we're glad we can be in your kitchen this way and show us what to do.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give you a little background about the story behind this. In the U2 feast. So I'm actually a university chaplain. I'm not a chef at all, but I like to cook. And I love to tell stories through food and make connections, especially spiritual connections, making spiritual ideas tangible that you can actually taste them. And so I'm actually working on a cookbook, and I have been working on a cookbook for a while, and I finally have a publisher now. And so one of the goals is to actually get my all my U2 dishes into the book. And so I'm excited about that. There might be another year or so until we're ready to actually publish it, but we're working on just kind of gathering all those recipes. Overall, I have over 70 recipes I've developed, 70 recipes and spiritual metaphors that make a connection to the recipe in a unique way. I have 7 themed feasts, and one of those feasts is the U2 feast. And I came up with the concept of the U2 feast when I was hosting, as a university chaplain, I have always hosting university students for dinner. And in my original Theo's feast, I think it's 6 or 7 different dishes, I actually use a quote from Bono on this is grace over karma as a connecting point to one of my dishes. And at that time, U2 was actually, they were rehearsing at one of our stadiums in Vancouver, getting ready for their next tour, which this is like 2014. So that would have been their Songs of Experience tour. Is that right? I always get those two mixed up. Anyways, they were rehearsing. And so my friend who lived near the stadium, he said, I can hear U2 playing right now at my house as a recording, as a rehearsing. You should invite U2 for dinner, because they would love all the metaphors and stuff like that you're doing with your food. And I thought, yeah, that'd be awesome. That's kind of like inviting the Queen for tea, right? Like that's going to happen. But it got my kind of creative ideas going. And I thought, well, what if I was to actually create a U2 feast? What would that look like, right? And so I kind of quickly looked at, I went to U2.com and I checked out some of their song titles and the ones that we're familiar with. I wrote down 19 different dishes that I could create a recipe inspired by. Thought, okay, maybe I've got something. I kind of narrowed that down to 6 or 7, and I created it as a feast, and I just did it for fun. And I had a bunch of people out, and they loved it, and I did it again and again. And we ended up being on Dream Out Loud, the film with documentary with David Barry. And anyways, I've done the feast a few times. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more. And so this Ultraviolet was one of those. I had, I think, 5 or 6 dishes already done and ready to go. And I like the song Ultraviolet, and I don't know where I get these ideas, but I put this together kind of in a hurry. And as I look back on it, I thought, you know what, there's some really kind of cool, profound connections to the song and the backstory of the song. And, as we kind of dig into the meaning of the song, which there's, lots of different people kind of philosophize on the meaning of U2 songs, there's a lot of connections there too. So on my website, theosweets.com, I do have kind of my own reflection and inspiration behind the dish. And I'll talk about that a little bit as I make it. I'm also wide open to your ideas and your interpretation of the song. And I'd love to hear your feedback as well. This is a super easy dish to make. It's much more of a palate cleanser than a palate cleanser basically means just something quick to nibble on into the next course. But as I put it together and put it on the feast, I love the connections with the Holy Spirit. As a Christian, I really deeply see this different spiritual connections within the UT music. And I love the connection, and the dish is delicious. It's super easy. And then when I gave it out to my guests at my feasts, I was really surprised in the feedback I got. I got comments on all the dishes, but this one really kind of evoked a lot of conversation about the Holy Spirit. And some of my closest friends thought this was the best dish of the entire night. I was a little blown away by that because it's a real simple dish, but it's really profoundly unique. So we'll get started. So Evan, I'm going to need you to kind of follow me here with the camera. So you're going to need to take the camera off there and come over. Okay. So hopefully you guys all have the recipe. If you haven't got the recipe, it's on theosfeast.com. Recipes is the first one there. Okay. So it's super simple. A granita is simply just a kind of a fancy chef. Rima, I might need your help. Here, Evan, this comes off like that. There you go. So you can bring it over here. The granita is kind of a fancy word for a slushy, but it's not really a slushy either. It's a little bit more refined than a slushy. So, but basically, the connections with ultraviolet is, of course, purple, being ultraviolet, and then you've got your so black light, of course, is a significant part of that as well. Evan, I need you to come over here and we need to film. So basically all we're doing here is we're just putting some filtered water. I find a lot of cases tap water has a bit of a, a flavor to it you don't really want. You put some 1 cup of filtered water into your saucepan. You're going to turn on the heat. You're going to bring this up to a simmer. You're going to put in some honey. So what happens with the honey? Honey goes well with lavender. And it also kind of carries the scent or the flavor of lavender a little better than if you're just to make lavender with the water only. Now, lavender is a very finicky ingredient, challenging ingredient to cook with, because you don't want it to, it can easily go from a scent of lavender to overpowering really quickly. So all we're doing here is we're making a lavender tea, and we're not going to boil it in the water because that'll bring too much out of it. It'll end up becoming bitter or even taste like soap. And I know this from experience. I've done this a number of times. So the honey is just going to help carry the flavor of the lavender. And so all we're going to do here is we're just going to bring this up to a simmer. And as soon as it's up to a simmer, we're going to shut it off. And then we add our lavender. And we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And then we're going to strain it. So you don't want to go crazy on the lavender or have it in too long, because then it's just overpowering. And all you really want to do with this is have the scent of a lavender, more of a scent of lavender in it than anything else. So we're just going to turn this up a little bit. We're going to mix that honey in. Pretty simple. So then, in the meantime, we have some grape juice. So I'm not sponsored by Welch's by any means, but I just want to show it to you guys. So the grape juice is just 100% actual real Concord grape juice. You don't want to go with a grape punch, a grape Kool-Aid or anything like that. You really want to get the good stuff. It's definitely worth the investment. You also want to adjust your recipe according to what you're going to freeze your granita in, okay? So you don't want to, I'm used to making this for 30 or 40 people at the same time. So I always make these big batches. So I really have to scale this recipe back. So you're going to just add your grape juice, 100% grape juice, into your container. And you don't want to fill it all the way up. You want to have enough room to put your lavender tea in it. And so I'm not really going to measure this because it depends on the vessel you're using. You want to find something that is shallow, because you want to freeze it well. You have to freeze this overnight. You want to freeze it well, and you want to be able to something you can easily take out, and then you're just going to basically just chop it up. Is all you do. Okay. So I've got my tea going here, or my hot water and my honey going. Just again, bring it up to simmer. Then we're going to put this. This is 1.5 to 2 cups or two tablespoons of lavender blossom, dried lavender, culinary. You also want to make sure with anytime you're eating, not all flowers of plants are edible. And those that are edible, you want to make sure they're culinary grade. Now, the reason why you want it culinary grade, pesticides or certain fertilizers could make what's something that is edible actually poisonous or toxic. So you got to make sure you get culinary or know the source of your lavender. Okay, so we're bringing this up to simmer. It's almost at simmer now. I'm just going to crank it up a little bit, and then we're just going to dump and stir in our lavender, dried lavender blossoms. And then we're gonna take it off the heat and we're gonna let it set for 10 minutes. Then we're gonna strain it and then we add it to this and put it in the freezer. Real simple, okay? But then we're gonna make fizzy grapes next, and that's also a lot of fun and really easy as well. So it's now up to simmer. It's basically, we're making kind of like a honey simple syrup with it. It's simmering now. And I would say that's good. So we're just gonna turn off the heat, pour in our lavender, give it a stir. And again, we're not cooking this in here. We're just letting it's come up to simmer. It's warm water. Now, hot water. We're just letting that sit. Gonna take it off the heat, set the timer, and it's going. So now we're gonna work on fizzy grapes. So the timer is set for 10 minutes. Okay, so fizzy grapes are a lot of fun. So usually when I'm doing a feast, I have a number of these here. These are a culinary whipper. You can get, there's a variety of different brands you can get. And basically all we're gonna do is put our grapes into here, gonna charge it, a couple of charges of CO2. Now, there's a difference between, a lot of people that use these are using CO2. There's CO2 and there's also, what's the other one? Nitrogen as well. So if you were to make whipping cream, you'd use nitrogen, not CO2. Okay, the nitrogen is what you use for whipping cream. So you want to get specifically CO2 cartridges. Okay, and so now all we're going to do is we're going to take some grapes, and I think I have a second. You can just maybe back up a bit, Evan. That'd be good. Take some grapes. And we're gonna just put some grapes in here. Now in my recipe, it says you poke holes, and usually I poke holes, but I think if you're reading a little further about this process, you probably don't need to. So we're just gonna put our grapes in here. And so what's fun about this, and what's fun about the connection to the song is Bono's singing about, there's a relationship going on to somebody he's deeply intimate with. And at the same time, there's a distance between them. And he's missing, he's kind of lost because of that loss of relationship. He's lost in the darkness. But as soon as he cries out to this person, whether that be his wife, a spiritual person, or even God, he is feeling connected with them deeply again. And so there's definitely a sense of intimacy, or even an intimacy lost. And so the nice thing about my experience is yes, it's a spam call coming in, with the Holy Spirit, is once you encounter him, just being in his presence changes everything. And I think that's kind of evident in the song. As a Christian, that's what I see in it, the symbolism and all, is that when you encounter the Holy Spirit, just being in his presence changes who you are from the inside. And that's what I love about the connection with the fizzy grapes, is the carbonation makes it fizzy from the inside. And so when I put this out on the table at a feast, people are just like, how did you do that? How are they fizzy on the inside? Well, it's because of the presence of the CO2. So the CO2 in a way is some fun metaphor for the Holy Spirit. So I'm just going to put a bunch of grapes. So some I put in loose and some I'm putting in still connected. Evan, you're a little too close to me. You got to go back up. Connected to, as a cluster of grapes. And I'm just going to fill it right up. And these grapes are washed, by the way. You don't want to, usually most grapes have some sort of antifungal pesticide or something on it. So you always want to make sure you wash your grapes. They often can be a little bit dusty as well. So, but there's also another way of doing fizzy grapes, and I'll show you that as well. So there's two ways of doing it. So we've got our grapes in here. I'm going to basically take some, as this is still cooling off and steeping our tea, I want to put that I'm going to take a little bit of juice to bring that lavender flavor into my canister here, into the grapes. And once I mix it, I'll take some of that and add it to the grapes, and then we'll charge it. Okay. So again, really simple, really easy. Now I've got something else I've done. I did this last night. And that is, maybe Evan, you can come back over here. Can you guys see this okay? So this is kind of fun. So this, I went to a local welding supply place and saw how we find dry ice around here, and got a big block of dry ice. And another fun way of doing fizzy grapes is to do it with dry ice. Now, if we do it with dry ice, you need a cooler, a dry ice, and a towel. And you just basically all you're doing is the same idea. The CO2 is just in the presence of the CO2 will bring fizz to your fruit, to your grapes. And basically what we're going to do here, what I've already done, I did this last night. So this isn't another overnight thing. So either when you're freezing the granita, that's an overnight. And then if you're going to do the dry ice, if you don't have a whipper, a culinary whipper, and you're going to do it with a cooler and dry ice, this is what you do. So basically I've got my grapes. I actually put a bunch of other fruit in there just for fun. And I'm basically, all I did was put the dry ice in the bottom of the cooler, cover that up with a towel just so the things don't freeze. And then I loaded it full of grapes and other fruit as well. Now I'm just going to open this. You know what, I'm going to open it up in a bit, but that's basically what's going on with this. I've got dry ice and inside this cooler. And what I've done is I wrapped it up with food wrap as tight as I possibly could, because what we want to do is you want to take as that dry ice, which is actually frozen CO2. Frozen CO2 is what it is. And as it goes from a solid to a gas, it's in sublimation, it basically is that presence of it brings the fizz to your fruit. But you want to have some positive pressure. So if you just had the lid on it by its own, it might not do it. So what we do is we wrap it up tight. And so you can see it's kind of a little bit, there's a little bit of a pressure to this. And that little bit of pressure is what's going to put the fizz into your fruit. So lots of fun. So we'll open that up in just a minute. So I think we're pretty much, I can just tell by the smell that we're pretty close to the lavender tea here. We don't want it to get too strong, right? Because that will then, you just end up tasting like, it tastes like grape soap. You don't want to do that. So we're just going to, I'll give it another 2 minutes. We're just going to, I guess what I could do is, we're not quite ready for that yet. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So like I said, this is a pretty easy recipe. What we'll do is we will add a little bit now, and I'll charge my grapes as that's still cooling down. So what I need is a strainer. And we're going to strain a little bit into a bowl. I'm just going to strain a little bit off so I can flavor some grape juice. I want it to go into my grapes to add some lavender flavor. I'm going to grab a funnel. Yeah. And so I'm just going to pour some of this mix in here. I'm just going to put a couple, maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons in. And then I'm also going to take a little pinch of my lavender, put that in as well. And then I'm going to seal it up. So again, this is 2 ways to do this. With my top go. So now we just seal it up. Nice and tight. Take this off. And then we're going to put our charger in. So charger goes in like this. You guys have never used one of these before. These are a lot of fun. These canisters are a lot of fun. We're going to put the charge in. Okay. It could be leaking actually. A couple more in there. First one. And that seems to be a bit of a leak. Try one more. Yeah. Turn the timer off. So that's 10 minutes for my lavender tea. Try one more. For some reason, my whipper is not cooperating. Not sure what's going on with that. Okay, well, we also have the other ones. Okay, so that's charged, should be. No, it's not. Or there you go. You never know what happens on. I'm gonna try just check it to see what's going on with this. Why are you not cooperating? I see. This is stuck. In the wrong spot. Okay, now it'll work. There was a little tab on the gasket that was getting hung up. Now it should work. You want a seal in here. Okay. Here. That's better. Okay. I'm going to do 2 charges. So we've got lots of helicopters buzzing over our house because about 10 minutes from here, I don't know if you guys have seen on the news, but we had a major flood. We had over the last weekend, we had more rain than we have in a month. They called it a, what they call it, a atmospheric river over our area, and it flooded all kinds of places, and towns and roads are washed out, and so there's quite a lot going on around here right now. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to filter this lavender tea directly into my grape juice. That is done, and we put this in to freeze, and can put a lid on it. You're going to want to freeze that overnight. Okay. So I've got my fizzy grapes here. Now I've also got, I pre-froze some granita. The magic of, okay, maybe I'll back up a bit, Evan. So this is my frozen granita here. Okay. So let's go do this over here for now. So we put that in the freezer overnight, covered up. Here's my granita. Now, I'm going to that out. Just run some hot water over it. You want to put it in a container that you can either put in another container that's with hot water. You want to be able to pop the whole block out easily. So we'll just run some hot water over it. for a second. Should do it. Should just come right out. I want to get a bowl together. You can put it in or another container. And now all you do, very simply, is we're just going to take this with a sharp chef knife, and we're just going to chop it up. Kind of like a pretty simple to do. You might want to do it in batches. It's pretty cold. It chops up easily. A lot of recipes for granita say, okay, just chop, mix it up with a fork as you're freezing it. But I find the same result if you just let it freeze up as a block. And then chop it up. Yeah. Pretty easy to do. Don't cut yourself. A nice sharp knife. The crystals themselves, it's a different texture than a Slurpee. A Slurpee would be very fine. This is more of a rougher texture. Okay. And then I'll just scoop that in my bowl. So usually what I do is I will chop it up and get it into a bowl and get the bowl into the freezer. And then when I'm ready to plate, I plate it all at once. That makes sense. So this got a fair bit of sugar in here. And so it freezes. It takes a while to freeze, but it's still on the soft side, I guess you could say. Softer than it would be if it was just pure water and ice. All right, so that's it really. Just put it in here. Get this in the freezer. And then when we're ready to plate, once you get our grapes out, we will be ready to plate here. So this is Evan's favorite. It's out of all my dishes I've created, Evan, what's your favorite?
One of the top 3.
Top 3. Oh, that's good to know. So on my website, if you go to my website and you go to themes, you will see the various themes I've done. And in there, you'll see the U2 feast. And I have a 6-course dinner that I paired, I call it the spiritual journey of U2, a culinary journey through U2. And I have had a lot of fun. That's one of all the feasts I've done. I'm definitely a big U2 fan, and it's definitely one of my favorites for sure. So I did it. I put on the feast the day after they opened in Vancouver for their Joshua Tree tour. So they were here on a Friday night, and I did my feast on the Saturday night. So I had a room full of about 40 U2 fans, and we had a great time. And there are people from all over. Met lots of fun U2 fans. And we had, I remember one of them, I was surprised I was going around the room, and I think it was just after Ultraviolet, actually. No, I served Ultraviolet. I was going around the room, just checking in with people, see how their food was it making sense? And this one gal, who was a university student, friend of mine, she said, and there's a busy room, the music U2 was going in the background, right? Like it was busy, so it was hard to hear. And I said, so how's it going so far? And she said, she kind of looked at me, she says, this is one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And at first I didn't really believe my ears. And I said, what? And I tugged on my ear because it was loud. We had U2 got a nice level for U2 fans. And she repeated it again. And she said, this is one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. She stood up and yelled it across the room. I was shocked because I knew she was at U2 the night before. I saw her at the concert. It's like, how could this be? What do you mean? Like, how could this be better than U2? She says, now I know what I'm singing about, why am I a U2 fan. Now it just totally blew her mind, because what I did is I spent the time to not just make the dishes, but the dishes connect to the song and the spiritual metaphor that they are singing about in that song. And so for her, it was just over the top for her, and she was just like, wow. And that always stuck with me. It's like, wow, okay, this is good. This is why I do what I do. Here, Evan, you can take that if you want. And so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I have a dish called Lucifer's Hands. I have Cedarwood Road, which is a Dublin caudal. I have I play with dry ice and with the Lucifer's Hands as well. They're basically just a super cool, my ultimate hot wings, but presented with dry ice, and we have a lot of fun with it. It's quite an event. I'm actually just got invited to do one in Orlando in February, and it looks like it's going to be U2 Feast, so I'm excited about that. Especially for being from Canada, going to Orlando in February. I'm all for that. So, all right. So now we're going to look at our grapes. So we've got our Granita is now back in the freezer. It's chopped up. And we're going to open this up and check out our Fizzy Grapes first. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just having this open. So hopefully this has worked correctly. We'll have nice fizzy fruit inside. Bit of a job. No, I don't want to cut you with the knife. No, it's going to take a knife to cut it. Sorry, bud. Thanks. Yeah, watch out. Yeah. It's really stuck here. All right. Let's see how it's doing. Do we have fizz? So you taste it and tell me. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So some of these are frozen, but none of them are fizzy. So there you go. There's our Fizzy Grapes. And just for fun, I got fizzy blueberries. I got some mango. The mango is pretty almost frozen. Maybe I was too close to that. I cut up an orange. Let's see how this goes. So now I realize I'm going a little off recipe on this. But I just thought, hey, if I'm gonna put a cooler full of grapes in, I may as well add a few more flavors. Wow, very good. So definitely work. I think the culinary whipper works better, personally, and these are definitely fizzy, but I like the grapes of the whipper better. Yeah, here, you want to try some orange? Sure. Rima, do you want to try some? Try that. Okay, so that's our grapes there. I'm going to move this over here for now. Okay. And now as far as plating goes, it's real simple. Doesn't get much easier than this. Basically, all we're going to do is we're going to take our bowls. Now, if we were going to, it's a good recommendation to have your whatever bowl or cup, whatever you're using for plating, presenting, is cold. I forgot to do that on this one, but recommended. So all we need to do now is we take out our Granita that's already chopped up, and we take a good spoonful, and we add it into our bowl. So if I'm doing this at an event and I'm doing a lot of them, I'll actually do this. If there's a walk-in cooler, I'll do it in the cooler. If there is not a walk-in cooler, I'll make sure my bowls are nice and cold. Otherwise, this will melt fairly quickly. So then we've got our grapes here. So I'm just going to let my charge out here. The longer you charge this and keep it charged, the longer or the more fizz you'll have in your grapes. So this one we only did for about 10 or 15 minutes. Whoop. So you can see here, are these better? Just starting to get fizzy. But just for the sake of time, then you get the idea. Where'd the paper towel go, do you know? Use a clean up here. Is it on the table? All right. So all we're going to do now is we're going to pour these out into a bowl. Nice and fizzy. Put them in clusters, they might not come out as easily. And you want to serve this pretty quickly because the fizz in the grapes will kind of dissipate. You can see how fizzy if I just squish it here. See how fizzy they are, right? If you can see that. Really good. So the fizz really accentuates the grape flavor. They're absolutely delicious. And you can have a hint, there's a hint of the lavender in it as well. So all we do now, put a cluster of grapes, and then we have, now when I'm doing an event, I like having some lavender blossom. And the lavender blossom is not something you really want to just chow down on. It's pretty potent. It's more of a garnish, but really, there you go. You've got your cluster of grapes. Very simple dish in every way, and a nice little garnish of lavender. So there you have it. I mean, obviously I did a significant fast forward on this because I froze my granita last night and my carbonated my grapes last night as well. But that gives you a pretty good idea of how it works. And of course, ideally, when you're doing this dish, you got, I love the 360 version of Ultraviolet when he's hanging on that microphone and he's got his LEDs going and swinging off the microphone. That's a lot of fun. But there you go. There is our Ultraviolet, lavender, and grape granita with fizzy grapes. So pretty simple. I think we're probably doing pretty good on time here. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, yeah, I see somebody's raised their hand. Is it Gerda? Go ahead and if you want, go ahead, just speak up or turn your camera on if you want, but maybe that was just a thumbs up. Nice job. Gary, I've seen those siphons. Where do I buy a siphon? It seems like I see a lot of people using them in, coffee shops, cafes, behind the counter, but can I just go buy one of those somewhere?
Yeah, you know what? You can buy them any kind of a culinary store, or like a kind of a chef store. You might even be able to find them at Walmart. I'm not sure. I buy a lot of my stuff online, whether it be Amazon, like what can't you get on Amazon.com, right? So I get a lot of my stuff. So when I wanted to track down the chargers, we have a store here in Canada. It probably is an American store. I don't know. It's called Bed Bath and Beyond. They have a lot of culinary, cooking type things. And I was looking for these specifically CO2 chargers because I use these in the soda stream. So if you want to make your own pop, that's where I got these. But they didn't have any in stock anyway. So I had to order them online. So I just ordered them on Amazon. I got this, I believe, on Amazon as well. It's kind of an easy way to find it, but I'm sure any of your it would be more of a culinary specialty shop. I don't know if you'd find it. Bed Bath & Beyond might have it on their website, but whether you'd find it in store or not, I don't know. A lot of places these days are like you have to pre-order online anyway. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Thanks.
But yeah,
what do you all think about that? Anybody? We have a question for Gary, maybe U2 related or kitchen related. Yeah, Megan.
I will.
I think Megan has a question or a comment.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I'm not much of a cook, but I loved how you tied together how cooking. My husband's a chemist, so I know he thinks about cooking in a very almost metaphorical way. And so I did really appreciate that. I'm curious because I've seen all the different angles that bands come at. Gary, do you view YouTube primarily through a spiritual lens? Is that kind of your first? Because I confess that was the first way I was able to connect out to Baby. It's an album of disconnection and doubt. I have luckily never really had a romantic dissolution. The person I'm married to was was the first person I fell in love with, and we have had a really good relationship. But I've always been able to see YouTube, Octane Baby, through the lens of doubt and spiritual struggle.
Okay.
Is that somewhat how you see Octane Baby as well?
That's a really good question. As far as in general, I don't know if it's specific about Octane Baby, but I remember way back in high school listening to U2, and I graduated in high school in 1987, kind of dating me, right? Oh, by the way, this is gonna melt. So why don't you take this and bring one to Rima? Okay, bring one to Rima. When I first started listening to U2, I liked the music. It was catchy. I liked listening to it. I could come along. I might have had a couple of cassettes or something like that of theirs, but I can't say I was a big fan of theirs. And slowly, I grew a little bit more in my appreciation of U2. And I think even a couple times they came to town, I'm like, I don't know if I can afford the tickets. I didn't go. I remember them being in town for the 360 tour, and I was kind of a nominal fan at that point. And then I became a Christian as a young adult, and I had a couple encounters with God. It really changed my life, changed everything for me. And I basically then, as I listened to U2, I started seeing or hearing things, and I like back up that tape, rewind. Did he just sing what I thought he sang? Is he talking about Jesus there? And there's a big kind of controversy whether they were Christians or not Christians and all the stuff like I don't know. And then slowly, as I was listening to more and more U2, I started starting to appreciate more and more of their music and their metaphor. And then I read a book called Walk On, The Spiritual Journey of U2. And it kind of opened my whole eyes to like, wow, these guys are like really very fascinating and a really interesting story. And then I started listening to them more and more. And then I started hearing all those different spots more and more and more, and backing up the tape or rewinding, at that point, they're probably cassette tapes I was listening to in my car. And started thinking about it a little bit more. But that's that book. And then I found a few more books like Walk On by Steve Stockman. And then I actually, Regent College is in Vancouver. And so actually Steve Stockman came to town and did a talk at Regent College. I attended that talk, and it really opened my eyes even further. And then as a university chaplain, as I design ways to get people thinking about spiritual matters, U2 is just a perfect fit. It's like, wow, here it is. It's all right there. All along, I've been singing along to these songs, and now I have a new understanding, a new deeper meaning of what they're actually singing about. Not all the songs, not every lyric, but there's enough what I call golden nuggets there. It's like, okay, I got to do something with this. And then as far as the connecting with my feast goes, I did a lot more research as I picked the different songs. And what I do with that is I kind of take you on a spiritual journey through U2 of U2's worldview. And all I'm doing is echoing. I'm not adding anything to what they say. I'm just taking their quotes, their songs, the backstory for their lyrics, etc., and the different things that they've encountered as being a band, and I reveal all that through my feast, and one dish at a time, one step at a time. And I know a lot of people who've attended them. This is total eye opener. Theo's feast is called Theo's feast because of the concept of theos, which is a Greek word for God, but it's really about theophany. And a theophany is, I don't know if many people are familiar with biblical ideas, but there's a point where Moses had an encounter with God at the burning bush. It's kind of a famous thing. Even if you probably don't even read the Bible, you might have heard the story before. And he speaks to God, or God is speaking to him through the burning bush and in an audible voice, and having a real dialogue with Moses that changed the direction of Moses's life, right? And that's called a theophany. And so the idea behind Theo's feast is that people will actually, when they come, they'll actually have an encounter with the Holy Spirit, have an encounter with God, have their own theophany, and come out of there thinking, okay, I have a totally new understanding of who God is, and what his message is all about. And I think U2 does that really, really well. I think they do I think it's just because Bono is who he is, and he just interweaves, that's part of who he is, his spiritual life, and he just kind of interweaves that into his lyrics, into his story, into the meaning behind the songs, which inspire him. And in a lot of ways, he writes his own songs that he wants to hear, right? And so it's just kind of, it's what's coming out of his heart. And I think he has as I can see, he's got quite a dynamic walk with God. And that walk with God has had a huge influence on who he is and what he sings about. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm not a U2 scholar or by any means, but just from what I've seen and what I hear as I'm humming along to U2 songs, I go, whoa, there's another one right there. Anyways, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of my answer for you. So yeah, it's lots of fun with U2 stuff. I can talk about U2 all day long. So yeah, anyways.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, what you've said is similar to my journey. U2 were actually instrumental in me coming to faith. And I kind of went back and became obsessed with the October era. Strangely,
Okay.
Unforgettable Fire book was a huge book for me, which was written by Eamon Duffy. And I know there's criticisms of it, but it kind of led me to exploring spiritual paths I probably never would have encountered. And at the same time, the whole amnesty thing really kind of led me on the social justice part. So for me, I became a fan in '97, and I went back to like the super spiritual part, and I'm from a really traditional Christian, I'm not family, but background. And when I discovered that those two worlds didn't have to be separate, it was a huge discovery. And I read Walk On, and that was a big part of my journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was surprised to discover that I discovered there's over 50 books written about U2 and their spiritual, and not all the books about the spiritual aspect, but a lot of them are or have components of it. After 50, I stopped counting. Like there's a lot here, right? And that's one of the fascinating parts about it, is that I see that as a Christian, I see that God is using them, whether they know it or not, or like it or not. They are who they are, and out of that comes a real a deep connections. And I think that's why they have so many passionate fans, and there are so many, as and it's not one thing that Bono is standing before us and kind of this unpacking the inspiration behind his song or the lyrics, or it might not even I know they collaborate together on who's actually writing those songs, but in a lot of cases it's also a little bit of imagination from our own in there. I remember hearing Edge talking about the interpretation of these different songs, and he says, you know what, these songs change over time, right? And that's why I think Joshua Tree was so relevant when they were doing the tour of Joshua Tree, and that there's the same songs, it's a new era in a way, but they still relate to our humanity in a new way, in a fresh way, in a way that we need to hear. And I think that's one of the nice things about about just being human. They're really good at, as they share their hearts, really on their sleeves, we all can identify with that. So yeah, anyways, I hear you loud and clear. So yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. I love the presentation. Thank you. I just want to ask you something which is slightly connected, slightly not connected. The Edge was asked one time, briefs or boxers? He was asked to make a choice between something there. But no, you're a chef. I'm gonna finish it with the juxtaposed. What do you think? Sea salt or Celtic sea salt? What's the importance of salt in food? Specifically, we know it's important in scripture. We also know it's important in our daily life. We also know it's important in our daily sing. I'm sitting here with a Scottish friend of mine, actually, and he said to me, what's the juxtapose between sea salt? And he said, it's Celtic salt. And I have no idea. What's your thoughts? And I will take your reply off the air, as you Americans say.
Sure. Well, salt is very. There is, I think, in Matthew 24, Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth," right? And he basically saying, salt is what brings flavor out. Okay, so basically, have you ever had popcorn without salt? Salty butter. It doesn't taste very good. It's really plain. But as soon as you add that salt to it, it brings pops the flavors. Just pop, right? And in that metaphor, what Jesus is talking about is, I want you to be. He also uses the same in that same metaphor. He talks about being, you're the salt of the earth, and you are also as a human and someone who's following Jesus. Maybe or maybe not. It's hard to tell who's actually addressing in that particular moment. But I want you as a human to be the light of the world, right? I want you to be a light. I want you to be salt and light. Salt basically is a preservative, but it also brings out the flavor. So I actually have a dish in my original feast called Salt of the Earth. And it's a very simple dish. It's almost like the Grape Granita, where all I'm doing is I'm adding some salty ingredients. I'm not actually adding salt at all to the dish, but salty ingredients to the dish that makes those flavors pop. So it's actually a watermelon salad, and it's got feta cheese, tomatoes, and prosciutto in it, and a few other ingredients as well. Very, very simple. It's actually on my website. You can see the recipe yourself if you ever want to make it. And it's surprising that the salt actually makes that watermelon taste sweeter and fresher. And it pops in your mouth, kind of like these grapes do. And so salt is what brings the flavors out. I know that I'm not very good at memorizing scripture, and I know that Eugene Peterson, who Bono's a big fan of, basically says that salt brings out the God colors of the earth, right? So yes, salt has a very significant role in culinary and food, but it's also a beautiful spiritual metaphor of just making things come alive. And that's very much what salt does in physically on your taste. It also is a wonderful spiritual metaphor as well. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thanks for answering the question. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Lisa, could you ask your question now? Sure. I'd love to hear his response. Go ahead.
Sure. I was wondering if there is a song that you are wanting to pair a recipe with that you haven't quite cracked yet, like it's stumped you or it's kind of a work in progress.
Yeah. I was hoping to get another one done because this one, I love inventing things. And I was really hoping to get another one done for Octoon Baby. And I'm on the verge of doing Acrobat. I love Acrobat. I think that's one of those songs that's just a deep rabbit hole of all kinds of meaning and like, what is he actually singing about? I got some ideas of what he's singing about, but there's just so much to Acrobat. And I thought, okay, I want to make something for Acrobat. I'm not sure. I'm looking at can you guys see me? I'm looking at my computer, so I'm talking to you. So I don't know if you could just see this side of my head on this or not regarding the camera, but Acrobat. So I have some big ideas for Acrobat. And I'm just at the verge. If I had a little bit more time, because I only come up, do you ever know when ideas pop in my head? And this idea popped in my head just very short time ago. And so it's like, oh, I'd love to, you know, even do a demo of Acrobat for you guys. But it has to do with, I don't mind drinking alcohol here and there, but I don't really drink much. A lot of cases I might use it in food when I'm preparing something. So not very familiar with it, but I have a recipe, a drink kind of just about ready to go for Acrobat that I think everyone's going to really enjoy. So I might have to, you know, do that next time, or maybe we'll just put it up on my website, or I'll put it up on Instagram when I'm ready for it. But yeah, it's that close. So, and also, as you guys, you know, maybe this gets the creative juices flowing for you guys, but I love creating things, especially about YouTube. So I got a lot of other ideas, and this is a wonderful question, but I'd love to collaborate with other YouTube fans in creating some of these dishes. So Zoo Station is also in my mind right now, because I've been listening to Acton Baby the last couple of days. I'm getting ready for the conference. It's like a 30th year anniversary and all. So Zoo Station is really kind of, I got a number of ideas for that. And it could be a lot of fun. I've got, there's lots of other, you know, dishes I could do. But when I do a dish, I don't just do a dish that looks good or tastes good. It has to make it on my menu, it has to have a real deep connection to the song. It's got to, you got to taste. So when my friends who had Ultraviolet, they said that they basically kind of had their, you know, theophany with it, as Bono's singing the 360 song, you know, the lights are low and the music's going, and he's, you know, doing that ultraviolet thing on the screen, and they're eating ultraviolet. Like they both looked at each other like, this is insane. they could taste, it's like, they said, it's like Bono stepped out of the stage and gave us this dish as he's singing it. It's like, it just blew them away, right? And I'm like, that's cool. But anyways, so there's, how many U2 songs are there? I don't know. There's a lot. And you know, just on a short pass, I wrote down 19 songs I could easily do. And now, if I was to look at it again, I'd probably do a lot more. So anyways, if there's anybody out there who wants to collaborate with me on these ideas. Oh, I also have, because it's a complicated dish, I actually have done a dish for Until the End of the World. And it's awesome. I love it. There's a lot of meaning and spiritual connection and wrestle in that song, and I made a dish for that song. I actually did it as a entry to a cooking show. I got a casting call for a show called Wall of Chefs, and they asked me to, you know, prepare a dish that shows off my skill, and it also, you know, communicates. I wanted to do something that captured what Theo's Feast is about as well. And so I did, I chose I chose Until the End of the World. And that's a fun dish. And I haven't revealed that yet because I still want to fine tune it. But that takes you down a pretty deep rabbit hole for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if anybody wants to see what I'm up to, I would suggest following, if you guys are on Instagram, my Instagram handle is Theo's Feast. So, and it's, you know, connected to my website and all that. So I'll be posting, I got more YouTube stuff up my sleeve for sure. And as I'm working on the book, I will be doing and publishing all of my, my YouTube dishes on my Instagram eventually as well. So a lot of them are up there now, even to see the pictures of them, stuff like that, like Lucifer's hands and all. But eventually I'll have all in my book, I hope, is the plan. We're just kind of looking at how do we do this well without infringing on copyright stuff. And so I've got, you know, I got to kind of work out some of those things. So I don't want to get in trouble with them or you know, they're pretty gracious towards their fans in that regard. I'm not too worried about it, but I also want to make sure I don't get in trouble later. So got to make sure I do things well. But taking, I'm really finding a lot of inspiration by a lot of the other books that have already been written about YouTube, but mine will be definitely unique because it'll be cooking, tasting YouTube. And if any of you guys ever have, like, if there's a group of you, or you know, if we ever can gather together as a conference again in the future, I would love to put on the feast for you guys. and I think you guys will just.
I think we need to get to Vancouver. We all come to you.
That'd be cool. We could do that.
All
Yeah,
dine
that would
very
be the
well.
easiest- that would be an easy way to do it for sure. Yeah.
Again, and a big thank you and shout out to Evan, your excellent cameraman. I hope he.
Oh yeah, sure. Evan,
I hope he
thank you.
gets all the rest of the granita tonight.
Yeah, it's his
Your heart's
favorite for sure.
content, Evan. All right.
He now
Thanks
has 2
again,
batches
dear.
to go through.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Well, we'll see
thank
you
you
soon,
so much.
and we'll go check out theosfeast.com and Theo's Feast on Instagram. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.